Hello there. Well, what happened? What happened? You saw that photograph. This is a little bit of old news, but you saw that photograph of President Trump's inauguration, yeah? With all the elite there, yeah? With Elon Musk and Zuckerberg and Bezos, and everybody was there. All there with the Trump family, all there in the first row. There were also a representative from Google, I believe. They were all there. What is the meaning of all this? What happened? Because up until recently, these gentlemen, except perhaps Musk, yeah, they were all suddenly, they had been censoring us. They had been doing all these things, and suddenly it looks as if they are the protagonists of this Kafkian metamorphosis, and they appear to be on Trump's side. And sure, Trump receives them and acknowledges them and compliments them even with lots of love and affection. And what happened? Well, and also at the photo of Bill Gates, who went to his private residence and stayed there with Trump for about 3 hours before the elections, I believe. Yeah. And also so many Hollywood stars and so on. So there are two interpretations to this. Well, there could be many, but I'm going to to reduce them to two. The simplistic one and the sort of more complex one. The simplistic one, simple or simplistic, both. First, that these guys all of a sudden change sides. They abandon ship from where they were before because obviously they only care about their profits and so on, and which is true. But in any case, they sort of decided to go with the flow, and they switched sides to Trump's side. Well, come on. There is more to this than this, right? So, because as Larry Fink said, the CEO of BlackRock, before the elections, he pretty much said that he cared a hoot about who won. Business goes on, and both Trump, I think he actually said, I'll find a quote somewhere, but he actually said that whether it was Trump or Harris, Wall Street goes on. It doesn't matter who wins the election. So when you have so much power, you see, this is the complicated thing, that when you have so much power, ultimately, you don't even know who exactly dominates who gives the orders or the instructions and who obeys them, who influences whom. The president or these guys or the president. So there has to be a deeper explanation for this metamorphosis. And I think Larry Fink is the one who gave us a more plausible explanation. What happened here? It's not as if Trump got up one morning and had this idea, well, I'm going to call these guys and ask them to follow my lead and be on my side. And each one said, oh, yes, Mr. President, the president called me and asked me to change my stand, and here I am, I'm going along. Come on. All right. So, no. There has to be another explanation. From about the 2000s, we lived through, so many things. The Twin Towers, the war against terrorism. What we have witnessed is a little more than 20 years, but more than that, but certainly 20 years of one specific hegemony, one dominant hegemony, one, let's call it supremacy, if you like. The American, or some people call it the Anglo-American hegemony, obviously headed by the US, and we have seen it progressively weakening. I know it doesn't feel like that, but internationally it was weakening, it was declining. And I hear you say, oh, what an exaggeration. No, it's not an exaggeration. American dominance, I think some people now use the word empire. It's certainly, you hear it more and more. But so, American dominance, American empire, whatever, is based on three important pillars. Military strength, and we have seen that in the last 2 decades, the American military has been weakening to the point of having problems both with the mobilization of troops and even logistics and effectiveness in combat. You know, we only have to remember the ridicule with the Yemenis. 3 fleet groups there. The decline is visible. Escape from Afghanistan, the disaster of Libya and Syria. All right, okay, so this is a reality. It's not being anti-American, it is the reality. Ukraine is another reality, yeah? So that is one pillar. You know, a table, if you a pillar or a table with 3 legs, 1 leg of the table. Okay, the other pillar of that dominance is the global narrative. That is what people say nowadays, the narrative. This is the cultural bit, yeah? That is, we want the whole world to see us favorably, as we see ourselves. I'm talking about that narrative that originates from the think tanks and then pass on to the main official media, the news agencies, the digital platforms, Hollywood, you know, all coming from intelligence and all that. That too has begun to weaken, especially since the virus, okay? And now, even in the US itself, I believe that it is less than 50% of the population that receive their news from the standard legacy media. There is an absolute loss of confidence in those charged with transmitting the narrative and the news to the general public. There is no confidence there, so there is a decline there too. And of course, the third pillar of that hegemony, of that dominance, is the dollar. Oh, but the dollar is strong. It's a very strong currency. Yes, it is. The dollar is still very strong and continues to be very, very important. But if that is all you see, you are looking at it, on just today, as if you're just taking an instant photograph of the thing. But you have to look at trends. And if you look at the trend for the last 20 years, you will see that the percentage of the dollar in the central bank's reserves has been decreasing. And the percentage in the number of commercial transactions in dollars at the international level has been diminishing too. So it is that trend that continues and is going to continue unless they find a way to turn this around some way. So what is the consequence of all this? Well, the American elites, the establishment, the deep state, whatever, Wall Street, whoever they are, we do know. The ones who really, the elite, okay, the ones who really dominate all this, they see it too. They also see it. And they made, let us say, a diagnosis of the possible causes. And among those possible causes, they see certain policies that have been carried out by the Democrats especially, but not only them. Policies certainly for the last 10 years, that have imposed an ideological superstructure. This is a very polite way of saying. An ideological superstructure that has been also eroding, weakening. Weakening what? Weakening American society itself, polarizing the population, and even making the country sick. Those were Robert Kennedy's words. Yes, the pharma people. And also seeing its power diminished in the international scene, where emerging powers now appear sort of capable of confronting and saying no to this cultural dominance. It was obvious to everyone that a big change had to be made to try to reverse these three trends together, which are endangering American supremacy. I think that what's happened is that there has been among the elite I actually talked about this in other videos. I'm always talking, I think, about the same. I think I'm repeating myself now. It's a question of age. Anyway, I think that there has been a reconfiguration within the American establishment to move to a new situation, a redirection. The objective remains the same, but the means have to change. To see if it is possible at all, well, it has to be possible for them, certainly, to reverse this trend, to reverse this decline. And if it wasn't, if they were too late, if that reversal is not possible, at the very least to have control over an area of influence important enough to, at the very least, allow it to have its due place in a multipolar world with great decision power and influence. Certainly, at least, to be able to control Western Europe and certainly the Americas, at least that, what they call the Western Hemisphere. More about this in a moment, but I just wanted to say that when Trump speaks, first, one thing is how he says things, and another thing is what he says. And sometimes it is not easy to know whether he's shooting from the hip or trolling you. But what I hear from him actually makes sense logically. Makes sense doesn't mean that I agree or disagree, but it makes logical sense. They follow a logic. That's what I'm saying. They follow a plan to reach certain objectives. Because if things went on the way they were going on, a collapse of that hegemony, of that dominance, could happen. I don't know, 10, 15 years, whatever, but it could. In fact, the elite, are not even sure if that loss of influence can actually be reversed. But at least maintain areas of influence absolutely necessary, both in terms of demographic, raw materials, energy, the control of routes, the Panama, Arctic, Greenland, whatever. It is not, I don't think, that Trump is all over the place, shooting from the hip, as I said, although he does, of course, but there is a logic to it all. And he has a plan that, lo and behold, happens to agree with what this sense of reconfiguration and redirection that the elites were talking about, or they agree that that change had to be made. I told you in past videos, I told you that I thought the establishment was divided. This is all speculation on my part. It's just sort of reading the leaves, as it were, but to me it seems obvious that they were divided. Those on the one side, let's usually call the globalists, the ones in power that we have seen for the last 15 years. Okay, the globalists. The ones who had, in my opinion, hijacked the United States government in favor of world governance. The vultures. I told you that I saw another section of these billionaires that actually began to look at things differently, that they didn't think it was working anymore. They saw that the vultures had entered into a no-exit street, a cul-de-sac. And they sensed, elites as they were, but they sensed people's dissatisfaction throughout the world with their ludicrous woke policies, for example, which, we talked about this many times, the vultures had encouraged, by the way, to prevent cohesion in society. I have spoken about this many times, because you need division and chaos in society if you are to continue to rob the poor Americans blind and everybody else. They imposed these ideologies in society. They saw how easily they could manipulate people. In fact, they mocked the population with them. They pleased themselves watching us all despair. A moral, decadent, perverted. And they even laughed, I'm sure. The hollow laughter of sociopaths. But there was a division. There came to be a division, and it has been there for quite a while among the elites, a dissection, a severance, a different view, a split that was becoming more and more apparent. Musk, Peter Thiel, others. They were billionaires too, they just saw it differently. They saw the decline and they wanted to steer it in a different direction. How? A reconfiguration, a reorientation. It didn't mean giving up anything, or if something, not much for them to notice. The point was to save the empire by bringing it back, actually, instead of world governance, to the old model, to the country itself. No more the obvious, evident, boastful, mocking self-conceit of those who argued representing world governance. You will eat bugs. Okay. Too flaunting, too crude, worse, too obvious. It was becoming a caricature, a meme. People were no longer scared. People were now laughing at them. and you can't operate efficiently out in the open, where everyone can see your moves. So let us redirect, go back behind the scenes a little bit. I believe that those were the instructions, the marching orders given from the heavens of extreme wealth. Never you mind the whole ideological superstructure that they had created and encouraged previously. That is gone, dismissed, no longer applicable. And so here's Trump. MAGA in 2016 showed, we were all surprised, people were surprised, but he did show a certain empathy with ordinary working people that attracted those people to them. People are saying, what, a billionaire? No. But because of his background, because he had also been excluded from the great and mighty, he naturally had a certain empathy with people who were being abused, really. So, the elite, 2024, moved to his side now. I'm speculating. An order came from above, from the heavens. But how? How can we go with him? We have been fighting him all this time. MAGA and, MAGA. Sorry, MAGA and all that. Never mind. To his side. To his side. And so, you see, in the space of 10 days, there they all were. On Trump's side. Or Trump on their new vision. They coalesced. We can't be sure. So they're using Trump for their reconfiguration. It works because he wouldn't have to give up or change any of his ideas. He wouldn't have to betray the people, the working people who voted for him. He just had to retweak those ideas a little bit. But MAGA is still there, very much right there in force. Don't know whether it is the police or an ambulance. I'm sorry about the noise. So let us say that his vision was broadened. No longer the speech about the American workers, American manufacturing, American this, American that. All that was kept. He hasn't changed that. So he's not betraying anyone. But to this, something else was added. What? Not only American workers, American this and American that. American empire. Don't think only of the... It's like they were whispering to him. Don't think only of the American workers here. You don't need to betray them. But think of the whole world and think of the workers and everybody else, America as the empire, transfer from world governance to the actual country. Think of America at the top. You are not betraying anyone because the American people will benefit too, right? So what I'm saying is that the Trump of 2024 is somewhat different, you might say, from the Trump of 2016. It is Trump 2016 plus. The mission is broader. Doesn't just encompass America, it encompasses the whole world. and with America at the top. And that doesn't go against his populist instincts. So yes, Trump has a plan. Larger, bigger, bolder. He does have a plan. A good alchemist that managed to be pro-American worker and pro-elite at the same time. The elite reconfigured. And this explains many of these strange things we now see, of how everyone, in 4 days practically, all have seemed to have switched sides, and there they are with Trump in the first row. And people say, goodness. And none of these people, not even one of them had the dignity to, at the very least, say, no, Mr. Trump, I'm sorry, I believe in this, I believe in what I have been doing is right, I believe in censorship for whatever reason, and I'm sticking to my guns. No. Or, look, Mr. Trump, I'm leaving the country. I'm leaving because I can't possibly agree with anything that you're doing, and so I'm leaving. No, no one. They were all there, firm, to attention, almost saluting. Seemingly so ready to go along. And what a turnaround, people said. This wasn't just strange, it was not even credible. But if that's what you think that's going on here, if that is all you think that's going on here, you're missing the whole point. That's my point. The reason why the new reconfigured elite was all there obeys to something else. And what that something else is has to be explained. Let me get a little glass of water here. We are seeing it. We are witnessing this reorientation of the whole establishment in the face of a situation that is becoming increasingly difficult. It was becoming increasingly difficult. Trump's motto, "Make America Great Again." That view of the country is what the establishment is now adopting, in appearance at least, as a means. They no longer have a problem with that, it seems. Why not? Because as far as they are concerned, nothing much will change. Not really. They have to preserve the power that they had. And in order to preserve power, they have to change themselves. They have to redirect that vision, or the means for that vision. Or rather, redirect the means by which they ruled for the last 30 years. That's what it was. And that is what it is now. It is the same establishment, just a redirection. But don't know whether you agree with this, but let me continue with my argument. I see a problem here, however. I see a dilemma in all of this. I see some obstacles ahead, obviously, and it is this. Empire, okay. Openly global governance until then. Openly US country now. At the end, the beneficiaries are the same, just different routes to get there or to preserve their place. So, different route, different obstacles. And one of the new obstacles I see in this new route the elites have taken is this: that the more powerful they make the US appear, also the more intensity they will provoke in this thing called security in geopolitics. What do I mean? Because other countries, to counteract the weight of the same empire with different clothes, then global governments, now US, to counteract this one country's political power, other countries are forced to join alliances, form alliances among themselves with others. They are too small and too little and too powerless by themselves, right? So that together they can confront this empire. And what I mean is that they are forcing, with this new strategy, that they are forcing this new interrelationship of these countries, China and Russia and India and Iran and other actors, their BRICS or the Shanghai Cooperation Agreement and other international treaties, to close ranks against the return of the old, the typical American imperialism of old, of, for example, the Nixon era, that actually I think Trump loves. He mentioned McKinley, President McKinley, in his inaugural speech. McKinley, 1843 to 1901, was assassinated. He was the 25th President of the United States, serving from March 4th, 1897, until his assassination, I'm reading now, until his assassination on September 14th, 1901, after leading the nation to victory in the Spanish-American War and raising protective tariffs to promote American industry. The Spanish-American War is when they took Cuba and Puerto Rico and the Philippines and all that. Okay. The story goes that he was assassinated by some Spanish mercenary or something. I wonder if this mercenary was the first in this long history of lone gunmen, so recurrent in American history. In any case, back to the security dilemma that I see for the US. And it is this. If I, the United States, if I continue to accrue more and more power, I am going to provoke an alliance of all the other countries against me. True. But, and this is a big but if I don't, the decline will continue. So I have to make a choice here. That's a choice. Because the elite knows that they are in decline. They can see it too. And that is a dilemma. That the dilemma in which the establishment found themselves in. So they decided to reverse the decline of their power, and that's why they joined Trump. And that's why they whispered in his ear, I'm speculating, don't think only of Reagan and Nixon, think of McKinley. Yeah. And so if you can't totally reverse it, at least find a new equilibrium. Correct it in some way. And this is what we're witnessing. Everything else, important as it is secondary. The California woke ideology, for example, the green agenda, that is really speculative eco-capitalism, that no longer all that important, gone. And the fact that it is gone and that many people are rejoicing, yes, that is important. Everyone is happy about it, yes. But in the end, It was just an ideological superstructure they used, a strategy, a means to an end. It had its purpose. It worked for a long while, but it ran its course, and they no longer need it now. In matter of fact, it is now perhaps even counterproductive. So they are disposing of it as a soil tissue. And yes, the nightmare is over, and we are all glad for it. And the only ones still aghast are the ones who they don't know what is happening and they continue with the same thing, are the ones who thought that this was an end in itself, not a means to something else. But the crucial thing is Trump is not going to change the structures of the American social political system or Wall Street or anything else like that. So, therefore, there they all were, the same oligarchs. I repeat, the same oligarchs who supported Biden now support Trump. The system remains the same, only the narrative has changed. The reason? To maintain, to continue to legitimize that power. The headlines from Reuters, for example, BlackRock abandoned the climate group and Wall Street lowers its environmental profile, all that. BlackRock, the world's largest assets manager, said, I think it was last Thursday, that it will abandon the management of net zero initiatives. The last Wall Street firm to leave an environmentally focused investor group under pressure by some Republican politicians. During the last recent weeks, major Wall Street investment companies, lenders, abandoned a similar climate organization ahead of the return of the president-elect. That is, financial oligarchs abandon environmental policies supposedly supported by not supposedly, by the Biden government. By the way, this wasn't a change. Then moving to Trump. It wasn't just a change. It was a stampede in 10 days. A stampede of all these guys placing themselves on the opposite side to where they had been for the last 10, I don't know how many years. All that occurred in 10 days, or perhaps even 4 days. But I repeat, it is not that they said, ooh, perhaps we went too far. Let us try to moderate our message. Perhaps we exaggerated a little bit. Maybe that ecological transition towards decarbonization has to be done more gradually. All this, no. It was a stampede, and to the opposite side. Okay, now, if the business, the corner shop, had done this, I could have understood it. It could have been, okay, perhaps out of panic. But BlackRock, which has stock packages, I think, in all the important companies in the world, do you think that BlackRock would be scared of a president who's going to be there for 4 years? BlackRock, if they don't want to be in New York, they can be in the city of London, they can be in Amsterdam or in Dubai or in Hong Kong. What are we talking about here? The only thing that can explain this stampede made by the oligarchy from one point of the pendulum to the opposite point is because what really changes in that system is the ideological superstructure which they are no longer interested in holding up, pursuing. it ran its course. Of course, people are happy about it. We were all absolutely exhausted by the whole damn thing. But actual power? No. They are changing the narrative. The financial structure remains. That's why we are seeing the same faces in Trump's inauguration that were there at Biden's. As in the Davos forum, that forum of the simians, we have again seen the same worn-out characters, some beginning to actually take a turn to see how they can position themselves before the new situation in which there is not one president, there is one establishment which has decided there has to be here a change of direction. Why change direction? Because it was not going well. Had it gone well, no change of direction would have been needed. They changed direction because it was going badly. Obviously, they're not stupid. They do their studies and their research, and they make their projections. And they see that things were not going well, and so they had to fix that. In the headline, the billionaire CEO of BlackRock, who said, "It doesn't matter who wins the election in the US. Both Trump and Harris will benefit Wall Street." He said, "I'm tired of hearing that this is the most important election of our lives. In fact, it doesn't really matter who wins." So I said that the foundations of American power are three: the military, the cultural, and the dollar. And to a certain extent, then we can talk of political power, and I will include the military there. Political power, cultural power, that is the hegemony and the dominance of the narrative and the culture and the propaganda and the media and so on, and economic power through the dollar. Political, cultural, economic. Now, empires tend to prioritize one of these powers over the others. No power, no empire can be based exclusively on the economic or on the cultural or on the political. The three are important together. But sometimes one is emphasized more than the others. For example, we could argue that with China, that power is based more than the other two on economic power. And yes, now they're strengthening their military and so on, but it's basically economic power. The Russians, on the other hand, I think it's probably proper to say that they concentrate more on the military power. Yes, okay. The US will respond with which power more than the others? And I think that up to now they played more with the cultural, the media power, the mastery of the narrative and propaganda. In other words, the legitimizing power. Keep in mind the rules-based order, the manifest destiny, exceptionalism, the right side of history, democracy, freedom, human rights, and all that racket. It has been its greatest tool. They have insisted a lot on that pillar, on that one leg of the three-legged table. Perhaps now with Trump, giving the kind of person that he is, what he considers important, they have seen clearly that the cultural power was producing a crisis of legitimacy in the whole world, because no one, unless you're a critic, believes it anymore. And they are turning now to the economic pillar. Because if you notice, most of the directives, the executive orders, the decisions by Trump so far, apart from the usual ones, messing about and mocking poor little Cuba and all that, okay, that's easy, but almost all have an economic nuance. Even as a threat to Russia for the negotiation of the peace, about Ukraine and all that, even that is full of what he said about tariffs and economic sanctions, more economic sanctions and so on. He didn't say, it wouldn't even occur to him to say that we'll send our military there. No. I think they're going more for the economic pillar, to win the battle of, for example, the artificial intelligence, AI, which will create stratospheric profits. We have to see whether it will materialize or not. The space race and Mars projects of the future, state policies, almost all have that economic tinge to it. And of course, the threats to other nations with sanctions and tariffs and so on. The BRICS, he said, he will impose 100% tariffs. Then he minimizes it, but we know how he negotiates. Anyway, tariffs to prevent migrations, tariffs on Europe for the percentage of budget contributions to defense. And Europe, have to buy our energy, which is, I don't know, 4 or 5 times more expensive than the Russian one. And if not, tariffs. Panama tariffs, if you don't give me back the canal. He said that the Chinese run it and that they charge the US more. That is not exactly true. The charge is the same for everyone that crosses that canal. American use it much more, that's true. But what he was saying is, unless you give me a big discount, tariffs, or we'll take it over. Denmark, tariffs, if you don't sell me Greenland, or we'll just take it away. Colombia, tariffs, 25% tariffs, if you don't take them back. I don't know what he said to Canada. We'll take you over, whatever. But it has to be some tariffs for something. So anyway, we return to the same battering of American imperial policy that was and is going to be again the economic side again, and therefore the strength of the dollar. The issues about the real absolute power of the US go in the economic direction, which is logical, if you think about it, in a president who is not a politician or a scientist or an engineer or a lawyer or a political philosopher. He's an entrepreneur, and an entrepreneur in construction. The Stargate project on AI, in which, curiously, Musk has said, I don't know with what nuanced, but he said that they don't have the money. And you see they're talking about, is it $50 billion? Of these, I think that 10 billion are going to be paid by the 3 main companies that have formed that consortium to carry out the project. But the other 40 billion, I'm afraid, perhaps are going to be paid by the American taxpayer. So what are we seeing here? Transfer of income again from the American workers, and most probably not only American workers, but also non-American workers through tariffs and things. A transfer of income in any case. To whom? To the oligarchs. You have Oracle, Japanese, I think there's OpenAI, another American company. By the way, the Chinese have just announced that they have done this. It's very, very advanced. And they did it with $10 million and just 200 guys working on it. Anyway, so it is not that Trump has arrived and, to power, and they are all in awe, surprised, hypnotized. And so hypnotized were they with his presence and his power that all the elites decided to switch sides and place themselves at the feet of the president. No. If you think so, you're silly. You are making a big mistake. It is an erroneous interpretation. You are drawing ridiculous conclusions because they are not based on an adequate diagnosis of the situation. They are flawed. So, we are now going to see, because you see, to reverse the situation like this, the US is going to have to extract a lot from everywhere. What do I mean by extract? McKinley was a great extractor. McKinley went about extracting countries from the Spanish Empire. Well, the British and the French had done it before that in the 19th century. Trump is going to do the same. From wherever. And by extract, I mean, and you got it, choose the explicative here, to seize or to grab or to snatch or to capture or to usurp or to commander or to confiscate or to appropriate or to wrestle or to plunder. So, now, what happens? For example, if on AI they can't win, they can't compete against China, what happens then? Could we see perhaps here a drift towards military power intervention, not just economic now, towards the maintenance of that American hegemony, American supremacy, in the face of economic failure in the competition against China? In geopolitics, power is always measured as relative power. A nation can be very, very powerful. Why? Because his opponent is very weak, and there is a huge difference between the two. But in this security dilemma that I was talking about, this opponent may join other opponents. And so the difference in relative power is not going to be so big. And it is no longer so big now. There is going to be, therefore, a greater balance. It is less profitable to bring in military power over others, especially when dealing with nuclear powers. And in these cases, victory is never guaranteed at all. In this military confrontation, even in the best of situations. In the best of cases, you'll end up as destroyed as your opponent. Of course, there is always gunboat diplomacy, but this is used mainly against smaller, much weaker countries, Colombia, for example. But imagine an alliance of Eurasian countries that actually make 3/4 of the world population. They have most of the raw materials, water, food, energy, nuclear weapons, industrial capacity. In the face of a largely financed economy with a very structured society, I don't see this in the short term at all, perhaps in the next 8, 10, 12 years. Could it happen, a return to the military as the main function? No, the US is going to try to maintain its supremacy using the economic lever, which is logical, which is rational. And at one specific moment, if they see that it's not going to be possible, they will try a new global order, perhaps sitting down at the table with the other powers and agreeing, another Yalta, and agreeing perhaps with establishing areas of influence. As after the Second World War. And this is where I fear the most, because these areas of influence will be, their spheres of influence will obviously be Western Europe, Western and Eastern Europe now, and the Americans, all the Americas. I mentioned Yalta. Okay, imagine Yalta, another sort of Yalta summit with Putin and Xi and Modi and Trump. Trump, of course, would say our area of influence is Europe and all the Americas. And that is actually incredible power. Think of it. It's a silly thing to say, but if Canada, I know it's silly, but just for the moment, if Canada were to become part of the States in some sort of way, I'm just, and they took over Greenland, let's just say, just like McKinley took over Cuba and the rest, their territory will actually be, sphere of influence will actually be bigger than Russia's. Raw materials, access to the Arctic, to make commercial routes, the whole of America, of the rest of America as a strategic rearguard, where there is water and lithium and gas, and it would be its solution in a multipolar world. If there is no other choice, they'll try to be, of course, the only ones for the moment, but just in case. Now, for Europeans and the other non-Americans, this could in a way could be a disaster, actually. Look, they have been so tiresome, so annoying, so irrational, so unbearable, with the whole woke stupidity, gender ideology, sustainable this, resilient that, for so many years, with the censorship, cancelling, shutting people up, that of course we are all shouting a huge hooray to what is happening now. If only because we are so fed up with that nonsense. The rest of the world is. But that's another thing. There is another thing. Another thing is to think that for non-Americans, that everything is going to be hunky-dory, perhaps is a stretch. Because we will be, if needed, sacrificed like that. And where this can lead us, I'm not sure it is so great. Let's talk about concrete conflicts. What he said, Trump, I love the Russian people, had always had a good relationship with Putin. He said that in his... not web, in his organization, Truth Social, yeah. He says, we must never forget that Russia helped us win the World War II. This is like Bush Jr. when he said, "Oh, the poor French, they don't even have a word for entrepreneur." Anyway, c'est la vie. He said something about losing 60 million lives in the war. No, it was 27. But anyway, having said all that, he said, I'm going to do Russia a tremendous favor to come to an agreement now and stop this ridiculous war. And if we don't have an agreement, I have no choice but to impose tariffs and more sanctions. I don't know how many more sanctions you can find against Russia. But anyway, more high tariff sanctions to everything that Russia sells. Okay. Look at this. On the one side, requesting kind of an agreement, and on the other, the typical sort of Trumpian American threat. Sort of bragging a bit, but understandable. Bragging a bit, coming from Trump, you expect that a little bit. But in his words here, there is a sort of a negotiation request. There is more of a request than a threat, if you look at the two sides of the statement. And then in that Hannity interview regarding Zelensky, he said that he wants to settle, that he has had enough. He also said that he's no angel, that he shouldn't have allowed this war to happen, and so on. So it was all Zelensky's decisions. Putin and the Western media willing to meet with Trump and speak. He said this. I don't have the quote from Putin exactly, but he said, look, yes, I would be willing to meet with Trump. And he said, speak calmly. I think this was, I read it in Politico, I think, that we must speak calmly. He also flatters the president a little bit when saying that, the previous election was stolen. And it would be better to meet if it would be a good thing to meet if we take current realities into account. He measures his words. They're opposite characters, aren't they? If we take current realities into account and to talk calmly about those areas that are of mutual interests. And we are willing to meet, but I repeat, this depends first of all, of course, on the decisions and the choices of the current U.S. administration. Okay, so all right, so they're pampering each other a little bit. Oh yes, the election was stolen. Oh, I love the Russian people. Okay, compliments all about. Diplomatic statements have to be understood in their context. When Trump posts that incredible tweet about the 16 million and they won the World War II, it could very well. You see, I don't think he's a stupid man. I don't even think he's an ignorant man. I think those two statements are to keep the neocons happy. In other words, what he's saying to them, oh, I'm not here to do what Putin wants. I am here trying to force a negotiation, and if not, we'll have to take measures, strong, drastic measures. beyond that, what is his stand? Zelensky is not an angel. He never had to have started this war. The Americans didn't start it, of course. Zelensky, what? And if I had been president, this would have never happened. Why is he saying that? Because he knows perfectly well why hostilities were reached. He knows perfectly well why that military intervention was caused. He knows that. And he knows that he therefore has to talk to Russia about. He knows the causes. When Putin tells him that if the election in 2020 had not been stolen, the 2022 crisis would not have taken place. That is, if you had been president, you, who knows perfectly well the causes, perhaps you wouldn't have done what Biden did. Because your political enemies, those who got to power, to the White House, are the ones who have caused this situation. So you know, when you come to negotiate with me, Mr. Trump, you know what you have to do and what we have to negotiate. And Trump knows that. And what has to be negotiated is not just Crimea and the Donbass and this and that. We are talking about something much, much deeper here. We are talking about that document that Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, sent in December 21 to the White House, in which he says that we have to negotiate a collective security treaty at European level because here NATO has expanded all the way to our borders, and you are putting missiles in Poland, in Romania, and what you are trying to do is to gain, obviously to gain a strategic advantage, which your strategic advantage is a threat to our national security. And Trump will have to understand that what NATO has been doing these years, getting to the actual Russian border, is what he will understand this, no problem, is what he would have never consented to if the cards were turned and this was happening at the Canadian or the Mexican borders. He knows that. So he knows perfectly well what has to be negotiated. He knows how the conflict came about. He knows perfectly well how this war came about. He was there when the big sanctions against Russia started. He was the president. And if he now wants to solve this in 24 hours, never mind in 100 days, whatever it might be, those were his limits, the 100 days, the 24 hours, but in any case, whatever they might be, it won't happen in 100 days either. Putin's words were very clear. We have to talk calmly. Why? Because here in the Ukraine thing, it's not a question of a ceasefire. This is not what we are dealing with here, is it? Because it is not only about this thing that's taking place in Ukraine right now. They have to talk about many other things if you want a lasting peace with guarantees. Because here we have to point out one thing, that no emerging power at the moment trusts what the Western countries do, including the US, because it is true, there is no treaty or agreement that they have signed that they didn't go back on and withdrew from. It's as if they respect nothing. Israel has already signed an agreement about Lebanon. What they signed doesn't appear to be valid either. Nuclear treaty with Iran breached too. Everything like that. So from the 90s, really, when they said that NATO will not expand an inch beyond Germany, everything has been a lie. And it seems as if the West has been lying for 3 decades, well, certainly 3 decades. And people obviously, remember Minsk 1, Minsk 2. What do you want, Minsk 3 now? So we have to talk calmly and see what the guarantees here are going to be. Signed, of course, with material guarantees, controlled. Because if we don't have a lasting peace, we have to do it this way. If not, what? And, what happens in 3 or 4 years when there in 4 years when there is another president? Trump is not going to be there forever. Things could change dramatically, might change, could change in 2 years. In the midterm elections, for example. I'm just saying might, it's within the realm of possibility, probability. And he will have to face problems in the House and in the Senate again. And in 8 years' time, what? Is the next president going to respect what we have agreed now? You need time to talk about these things, yeah? Speak calmly. They cannot continue to go on thinking that they can make fun, really, of everybody all of the time. And Western leaders, we know what they're like. Same type of characters here in Europe, sort of halfway between the idiot waving their hands in traffic at the traffic lights and the mobster, a mixture of a clown and the mafioso. So, ceasefire in the Ukraine, forget about that. That is not the whole issue here. There will be no ceasefire. The negotiation Trump is proposing is between the US and Russia. He wants to meet with Putin and says he believes that Putin wants to meet with him. So here the negotiation is between Russia and the US. Zelensky doesn't appear there. The EU doesn't appear there. Why not? Because the ones who are going to decide on the question that has to be decided upon are these 2 countries. It is not just a ceasefire in Ukraine. There are many more things here that have to be exposed and talked about and ventilated. Transnistria, for example, the withdrawal of NATO strategic offense weapons to the 1997 borders, Georgia, the Caucasus, many issues here, sanctions, return of frozen assets, Nord Stream. Does anyone really think that Russia has forgotten what has happened in these last few years? So first, conditions for the two to meet. That could happen in 2 months. Someone suggested the 9th of May. I don't know that that came as a troll from the West, from the United States, or from Russia. The 9th of May. The 9th of May is Victory Day in Russia, commemorating the Soviet Union's victory over Germany. In any case, whenever it is, if Trump is invited, of course Trump will go. He went to North Korea, he will go. That's not a problem. The meeting is not the problem. That's one thing. Another is that when it comes to negotiating, that's something else. It will be necessary to first establish a whole roadmap of negotiations. Ukraine will be a point there, obviously, but not the only one. And for that, there has to be a series of preconditions. In the case of Ukraine, for example, there are laws that prohibit the Ukraine to negotiate with Russia. Those would have to be repealed somehow. There are articles in the Ukrainian constitution put there in recent years to get Ukraine into NATO. Those will have to be modified. We are talking here about a constitutional reform. And who is going to sign that? Russia says he has to be a legitimate president. And it cannot, therefore, be Mr. Zelensky. There also has to be the Ukrainian parliament. They will all have to be there to vote. Not as now a Rada that is where there are many members who have escaped. There are others who are being persecuted and are in jail. Others have fled. There has to be elections. There has to be an electoral process. There has to be an updated census. In a country where right now there is no census possible. All this will have to happen to be able to negotiate anything. Because Putin will have to sign whatever agreement regarding Ukraine with someone. And it will have to be legal. Legal according to Russian law and legal according to Ukraine laws. Otherwise it would be challenged, by the next president or challenged in the international courts the day after. There will be no ceasefire in a week or 100 days. And let me say this, we should be happy if conversations between Putin and Trump begin and there is a certain sort of detente that avoids nuclear escalation. I don't think either of them obviously want to reach that point. I think my personal opinion is that Putin has exercised a lot of actual self-control over the continuous poking, and I don't think Trump's instincts are also kind of for peace. I don't think he's comfortable at all in war, and certainly not a nuclear war. Trump, no. Bad for business. So, where do I end this? Because I do have to end. I think what we have at the moment is much better. I really do, than what we had up to now. And perhaps this is how I should end it, that we have been very close to nuclear war, and I think that now, at least with Trump, that will be avoided. So, welcome, Mr. President. Bye-bye.